Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick Taking Table. I'm Edward, and today we will be covering a ton of Numil games. A lot of the new Numil games. Because there is a new batch, and we have some special stuff coming up in February, the month of love. So I thought we would cover these now, just to get ahead of it, because these are all going to be 2-player games. Date night in a box. This pre-order for Numil is going live in February, I believe. I'll put a link in the description. But these 3 games, which we have Lepidoptery, Dickory, and Greasy Spoon, are all climbing, shedding, 2-player games. And we actually covered Dickory before on the channel, so we loved it back then, and love it now. So we are going to show what's different with this edition, including using the game box to keep track of part of the game. If you're familiar with Dickory, it's the kind of what is the strongest number at the time, which I love, kind of from Samia, if you remember that, where it uses the game box. We absolutely love it. But all these games here, yes, like I said, are 2-player climbing, shedding, and they are from Numil, so huge bias. And also all or most of the designers in here are pals, so huge bias. So teaspoon, tablespoon even of salt of bias. Take everything with a grain of salt. The games we are covering are Dickory by Hannibal Sonderegger, I can't say it, and Sean Ross. And we have covered this in the past. So the hook to this is climbing, shedding, but when you take cards, you kind of change what value cards are. It'll make more sense, but the rules are the same if you've seen that old Dickory video. But it's so awesome to have a copy, an actual game box for this wonderful game with art by, I think, Imogen O, which we will show off. Then, following down into another thing I can't say, Lepidoptery, which I believe is the study of framing butterflies. But this is designed by Srinivas I'm so sorry, Srinivas. This is designed by Srinivas Vasadevan and David Koresh. I am so sorry. I can't talk. I can't even speak English. Anyway, this is a game where you can win in one of 2 ways. Either winning in Connect 4, if you remember that game, and not a climbing shedding game, or by shedding out, because you have your own personal deck. Also has like must not follow in a way, kind of ish. Wild stuff. Definitely one of the more wild games I've ever played, but we will go to the table and I'll explain how to play that. And then finally, Sean Ross's Greasy Spoon, where the premise to this is players have their own deck, and it's also like a deck shedding. And what I mean by that is like, you're not just trying to get rid of your hand, you're going to be drawing up cards into your hand through the course of the game, and you're going to try to get rid of your entire deck, which actually is similar in Lepidoptery. So the hook to Greasy Spoon is essentially that, but also just a ton of combos of what is essentially kind of full houses and things of that ilk. Whew, that is the lineup. And before we go to the table, I did split this video up because there's actually another release part of this by a Little Dog and Daniel Cannell and Sai Beppu, which we'll cover later, Dino Tricks. But in here, it's 3 games, so I would probably die if I tried to cover 6 games in one video. You don't want to watch a 9-hour video, so we're just going to do these 3, especially because, 2-player climbing shedding has like a wonderful kind of collection vibe to it. So let's go to the table and let's teach these 3. Whew, and I'll put these spoons down. Jeez Louise. Jeez, this is going to be hard to explain. The deck in Greasy Spoon, or should I say decks, because each player gets their own identical deck of cards, is 1 through 6, 3 copies each of 3 suits. You have ketchup, mustard, and relish. Here we have a game of Greasy Spoon set up for the only 2 players. So you're going to give each player a deck of cards. They're going to shuffle it and draw 11 cards. And this is a climbing shedding game, but you're not trying to just shed your hand of cards. You're trying to shed your entire deck of cards. So players are going to have 11 cards, and what they can play is a pretty big list of things. So they have singles up at the top here, and these are all menu items. So like singles are called sodas, and they're listed under drinks. Then you have sides, and you can play rings, which are a run of 2, unsuited, fries, which are 2 pair, or a pair rather, fancy rings, which are a suited run, and then fancy fries, which are a pair but the same number, same suit. So kind of like a super mega unsuited pair, if that makes sense. And then you have mains, which is 3 cards. So you have an unsuited run, and then triples, and then you have a suited run, and then you have super duper triples. So all 3 cards of the same suit, because again, there's 3 cards each. And then what you can play are combos. So things like you combine a main and a drink, or a main and a side. So in this case, it was triples and doubles. So a pair and 3 of a kind, or otherwise known as like a full house. And in this case, you play the cheeseburger and fries, or you could do a triple, like this is an unsuited run with a single. So just a random soda. So that's a hot dog and a soda. So let's go into the gameplay now that we kind of know what we can play. You can also just lead any of those items on their own. So like maybe, for example, this player right here just plays a 2. And after you play, you immediately draw back up to 11 cards in your hand. So then this player over here, they could pass if they wanted to, but maybe they play a 6, and since that's the highest, the other person would be forced to pass. And when you pass, you can choose up to 3 cards from your hand to put onto your back burner, which is like this own separate pile over here. So maybe this player over here chooses, maybe they don't like the reds in their hand, and they choose these 3 cards to go into the back burner. And so they're going to draw back up 1, 2, 3. And then if a player passes, you're just going to clear those cards. And then this player also, they played a card, right? So they're going to draw, and then they're going to lead. And so they could play, pairs. So coming over to the menu here, a 4 and a 4 of different colors are fries, because they are the same suit pairs. So fancy rings, or a run of 2 suited, or 2 of the same card can beat this. So again, this player immediately draws back up, and then coming to this player, they're looking at their hand, and they could just play a higher fry, so they could play 2 5s, because that's stronger. 5's stronger than 4. But maybe they want to get a little fancy, and they're going to play boom fancy fries, because they're the same number. So the only thing that can beat this, again, this player's going to draw, is 2 5s of the same color or 2 6s of the same color. So this player over here does have that, so they're going to do that. So this forces this player to pass, who again, if they wanted to, they could backburner. Maybe they backburner those 2, and they draw these 2. And so this player, they play 2 cards, they're going to do this. Since this player was forced to pass, they're going to move this over. And same thing can happen with the mains. So you have a similar thing. Someone could lead an unsuited run, and then it's just higher unsuited runs, or you can play a cheeseburger, or you can play a fancy dog, which is a suited run, or a fancy burger over that. But the main thing of the game, I was just showing you kind of a little intro there, is playing combos. So if someone plays a combo, you have to play the same combo. So coming over here, it says a main and a drink. So a main would be something like this. This would be a run of 3, and they're suited. So actually that would be a fancy dog here, because it is a suited run, 1, 2, 3. And then they are going to do a combo 1, which adds a drink. So they can add any card they want. Doesn't have to match, doesn't have to do anything. So maybe they just toss in this green 2. And then again, they're going to draw back up to 11 cards. And then coming over to this player, if they want to play into it, they have to play the same combination. So they have to play a 3 main and then a single. And so they could play a higher main if they have it, which they do. They have like a 4 3 2. So let's say they do that. Boom, 4 3 2, and then they toss in that soda there. And then it's going to go to the other player over here. And so continuing on, and the next player could play like a 2 3 4 run with a 6 if they wanted to, because they could have a higher ranking drink. Or what they're going to do here is they could just play, a higher ranking 3 card. So maybe they do that, because 3 of a kind, as you can see, is going to beat, the last thing was a fancy dog. Well, this is a fancy burger, and it's one of the biggest fancy burgers you've ever seen, because it's 3 6s. So the only thing that this person can now play would be 3 6s and then something higher than a 1. But they're going to pass. And again, if they wanted to, they could backburner, that card and then draw back up to 1. So flow like this is going to continue until players are out of both their whole deck, their whole hand, and the back burner. So let me explain how the back burner can get back into their deck, back into their hand. Well, when drawing from the deck, players may take all the cards in their back burner, shuffle them in first, and then draw into their hand. So maybe this player has been putting away some higher cards that are pretty strong, and they're like, ooh, I'm just getting bad cards now. Maybe instead of drawing back up, they are going to combine their back burner in their deck and this card and shuffle it up, shuffle, and then they're going to draw, up back to their hand size of 11. And the first player to shut out their entire deck, burner, and hand will win, and that's how to play Greasy Spoon. The deck in Lepidoptery, or should I say decks, because each player has their own deck, they are identical, are interesting in that it's 1 through 10, but the 2 through 9 have 4 copies each, as you can see up here, but the 1 and the 10 are 3 copies each. Also, each player has kind of like a pass/wild card. Here we have a game set up for the only 2 players, so you will give each player their own deck. They'll shuffle it, they'll draw 12 cards, and then they're going to put their wild off to the side, and it's going to be flipped face up. Whenever they use the wild, they're going to flip it face down like that. Also, you're going to set up this grid here, just like this. So you have pass and run of 3 on the left, pair, triple on the right, and then run of 2 and single in the middle. And what it's supposed to kind of be is this parabola of number of cards you're playing. So like a single, then 2 cards, and then 3 cards, and then the pass over on the side. Over here, you're just going to have the pile of tokens. They're double-sided, so you don't have to, worry about passing them to either player. Just set them there. And then finally, you're going to put the tokens for the players on the pass. To start off the game, let's say it's this blue player, this frame player over here. They can play whatever they want, either a single, run of 2, or a run of 3, pair, or a triple. Look at their hand here. Maybe they just play a single. And what they'll do is they'll take their token, they'll put it on the meld that they play. So they played a single, so boop. And then also on that column, they're going to put their own color right above, kind of like Connect 4, like they just slid a token all the way down. So then it will go to the next player. This is a climbing shedding game, so since climbing, they have to play a higher than a 6, they will have to play, maybe with the 8 or the 9 or maybe there's 10 in their hand, but they can play any meld they want. So let's say, looking at their hand, they just decide to play these 2 8s. So they're going to come over here, they play a pair, so they're going to make sure to put their token there, and they only could play that because it was a higher number. Coming to the blue player over here, looking at their hand, oh, they should have their wild, looking at their hand, they could play a pair of 9s because 9's higher than 8. Or if they wanted to, they could play, maybe they flip this and treat it as a 10 and play a 9-10. And so they would move their thing to a run of 2, and they're able to play the 9-10 because, the 9's bigger than the 8 there, and they're going to put their token there. So coming to this player over here, they have a single 10, so maybe that's what they want to do. Maybe, they'll just play that single 10. So they're red, they're going to come over here. And just like Connect 4, they're going to add on top. And so they're kind of looking like maybe hopefully they can get that Connect 4. And then it goes to this player over here, and maybe they pass because they have to in this case. So they're going to pass. When you pass and you use your wild, you'll flip it back up, and then you're going to draw up to 12 cards. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, they have only used 2. I could do that easier. So they're going to draw up to 12 cards. Then we're going to discard all the cards in the playing area. If a player passes, they're going to move their token off. So then now they can actually do a run of 2 again, interestingly. The player who didn't pass will also replenish their hand up to 12, so they'll draw 3. Noteworthy, if they had this flip, they won't reflip that because they didn't pass. You only can get your wild back if you pass. If you had 12 cards in hand, by the way, and you're supposed to refill, you can draw 1 card. But usually you'll just draw up to 12. And then this red player is going to lead, so they can't play a single. Maybe they, play a run of 3. So they do 1, 2, 3. And then they'd come over here and put their red right there. And you can, in this game, play higher number. So let's say that maybe earlier this player actually played a 6, just a single 6, and maybe they went over here and put the 6. Well, it comes to the blue player now. They can play 2 6s because it's a higher number of cards. So they would go there because it's a pair, move theirs there. And flow like this would continue until either someone gets rid of all the cards in their deck, so they shed out their entire deck, not including the wild, that's not part of it, or if one of the players makes a connect 4. Then the game is over immediately and that player wins. And just to clarify what can be played over, notice how it was a single 6 and then 2 cards of 6. This would also be valid. This player over here could play a 6, 7, 8 because it's more cards. But usually you have to play a higher number or number of cards. So like back to this example here, this player could play a single 7 if they weren't on the single space, but because that 7 is higher than that 6. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's how to play Lepidoptery. The deck in Dickory is 1 through 12, 4 copies each. I'm not going to do a full teach of Dickory. You can definitely go check out the video for that. But one awesome thing I wanted to note, though the art is another awesome thing. I think it looks gorgeous. But the really cool thing is, just like Somnia, where the game board was used to denote what Trump is, in Dickory, as you can see here, you can use the included mouse token and the game box to denote what is the strongest number at the time. So let's say, I mean, if you're familiar with Dickory, you will be taking cards from here and it'll be changing kind of the strength. But let's say it was 10 right now, and then if this player, took that 10 and it moved to 9, you can just move the mouse along the board here to point at the strongest number. And that's what's new in Dickory. So that is Lepidoptery, Dickory, and Greasy Spoon. And here we are, 2-player games with 2 cats. Okay, censor that. Boris, inappropriate. So, yeah, two-player games. They are friends and huge bias to many people involved in all these games and designers. And so, keep everything I say with a huge grain of salt. Let's first talk about Dickory and the new production, because thoughts are very much the same. I think Dickory is a wonderful time, a little bit of a brain melt. It's awesome to see Sean and Hannibal together. I think that combo leads really to really interesting designs. Like, I hope they make more in the future. I think this specific edition of it is just gorgeous. I remember I marked Dickory on wish list and want to have for a long time because I was hoping an edition would come out that looks this good. I think it just is so wonderful. Such a wonderful purple, and I love using the clock on the box. I think I am partial to the index online that will kind of like shift, so it just shows you like the automation of like, oh, it's now 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, or 2, whatever it is. But I think this, especially for a manual implementation of it, does a good job. So to the gameplay itself, again, similar thoughts. I think it's a good time. Has it aged well? I think so. It's wacky. There's some fun twists. Not every card's good, not every card's bad. You can kind of set yourself up for some fun plays. It's cool to go back to this design, especially with this really nice coat of paint. So that is Dickory. What are you doing with that? Okay, moving on. Greasy Spoon by Sean Ross. Another Sean Ross's joint. I think this is wonderful art. This might be one of my favorites of the new mill. I mean, Gachapon by Sai, obviously. But this by Carly AF just is so good. I love how it's a little bit like Burger Time. It gives that Burger Time vibe. Almost 8-bit, but not really. And it has just wonderful kind of burger art and all the ketchup and stuff. It looks like the Heinz bottle and the font. So that looks wonderful. I think this game is so fascinating because I do this when I review games. I'll look at ratings and I'll see kind of where my opinions are in terms of the general sense and if I agree with people and if not. And I wouldn't say that colors, my opinion at all, but it does give me a sense of like how I should frame things. Like if I really don't like something and everyone else loves it, I'm like, oh, what am I missing, right? And I'll ask people like, what did you like about it? And sometimes in a review, I'll try to communicate that. Like if I have a bunch of friends who don't like a game, but I do, I'll try to be like, yeah, well, some people don't, whatever. Or like if I don't like a game, and a lot of people do, I'll be like, well, some people, they like this about it. And what's interesting is going to all of these games. So all these games are on BGA. So you can play them. So even though a huge bias and like, if you've, I guess, listened this far, you're kind of probably comfortable with the bias, definitely go play them for yourself and get a sense of what you will like. But what I've noticed is this is, of these 3 games, Greasy Spoon is the most subtle and most bizarre from a gameplay flow state, which is saying something because we haven't covered Lepidoptery, but this one is also very, very wild. Interestingly, both like deck shedding games, so it's kind of funny. But back to Greasy Spoon. The flow of this is wild because every game I play, and maybe that's just how I play or the people I play with, it goes to where one player will just like play, and another player will pass and like try to get into it, and then that other player will get the flow and it'll be like play. And then it is so weird in a climbing shedding game for one player to just play and lead and only play into a trick like 5 times in a row or like 6 times in a row. I remember a recent play actually where I didn't play the first 5, 6 tricks and then I played the last 10, and it is a very bizarre flow. It's unlike Haggis. It's unlike Scout. It's just like a game where you could just be sitting and watching someone play for a while. And I think what's funny is in modern game design, that is not seen as good. I think that's seen as like, oh, you're playing a lot more than me. Even though, if you think about it, like, yeah, I played 10 times, but at the start I didn't play 5, or in the middle maybe I played 5 less, and so maybe on average we're playing the same amount. But just be warned that this game is very subtle. There's a lot of like pacing and flow. And we're going to talk about fishing. I point because it's over there. We're going to talk about fishing a little bit, and I think that game also has a lot of like this flow where you have to be aware of when you're on the up and when you're on the down. And I think people maybe notice the down more than the up. It's just a very subtle game. Like, you have the same deck as the other person. It's how do you use it. And with the back burner mechanic and cycling through your deck and drawing every time you play, there is a sense that you are cultivating a hand. You are getting somewhere. You are going somewhere. I think, just as an FYI, some people might play this and be like, wow, you just played 5 times in a row and I couldn't even play on that. Yeah, but you're like cultivating your hand. Or like at the end, someone just plays 10 times in a row and I couldn't play. Yeah, like that's because maybe they had a stronger deck. So I think it's an interesting game because there's like a weird amount of downtime for the other player sometimes. But I have seen it to where, like, usually in this game someone will play like 4 or 5 times in a row and the other person either can't or won't play. And so just be aware of that. I think there is a really cool amount of flexibility, amount of melds. I think this is like an unabashed love of like full houses and like whatever that entails. Or like those melds in Chimera where you can like add a single. I forget what they're called. And here they're all called like gooey fries and poutine and stinky dog and whatever. But I think there's a great breadth of melds that are still intuitive. Like, I'll play domino shedding games that have like a bajillion different melds, or certain climbing shedding games that are just a lot and a little overwhelming. And while this is a lot, I don't find it overwhelming, which is great. I think I've said it a few times already. It's a subtle game, but I definitely do like it, and there's some really interesting skill that can go into Greasy Spoon. Okay, moving on to Lepidoptery. This game is wild. So I love the 2 different ways to win the Connect 4. Connect 4 is a fun mechanic, and I think it's one that kind of universally people know and love. It's one of the ones that when you're explaining the game, you kind of usually just have to be, this is, Connect 4, and people understand that. I think I've seen it happen. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've seen it happen to where shedding out in the Connect 4 victory is equal. I think I've noticed, and again, this is maybe just how I play, I've noticed the Connect 4 being the way it happens usually, because I think to shed out you have to kind of go through a few amount of Connect 4s, but shedding out is definitely happens a good amount. And I think I heard through the grapevine that they are both highly likely to happen, which is cool. I think the Must Not Meld is really fun. It is just a little confusing on what you can play sometimes. Like, I think that always just trips me up a little bit with Must Not Follow Meld, because you're climbing shedding on like a different number. Like 2 5s can beat a 5 is like a little hard for my brain to get sometimes. It's a mix of like Sumida River and Scout, where like numbers are bigger. I think I prefer the Sumida River way, where it's just like the lowest card in the meld just has to be higher than the lowest card of the other meld. Other than that, though, I think everything else is great. I think the art is wonderful. I think the production's nice. I love double-sided tokens. That's so clever. The amount of melds is super clever, though. Like, it goes single, and then 2-card melds, and then 3-card melds. So nice. I think the columns are a great length. I think when it goes all the way up. Oh, I didn't explain this in the rules. I'll explain it. I'll add it. So you will have seen it. But I like when a column gets filled, it stays that way until another column gets filled, and then it wipes. Super clever tension. I think that David and Srinivas just did a wonderful job when you think of that idea. Like, oh, Connect 4 shedding. And this is just really, really well implemented. Like, great tension, really cool use of mechanics, nice flow. It's got that mechanic where you can't play what you just played again, which is interesting. Like, you see that in, I guess, like Scythe or games like that. But it works so well here, not as just a limitation on changing what you play, like melds, so it changed the climbing shedding up, but also the cleverness of, because then you can't do a double token to connect vertically, so it's a little harder to connect vertically, which is more interesting to connect horizontally or diagonally, which is super, super cool. And then finally, I think what's interesting is actually comparing the two games is like Greasy Spoon, you drop like immediately when you need cards, and then this one is you drop only when someone passes. So I think there's a fun tension to passing and getting your wild back, but letting the person go twice in a row, which is huge for Connect 4. Like, if you're just imagining, playing Connect 4 and being able to play twice in a row, what? So yeah, there's just a lot of really fun levers. I think this is a great one, and one of the various ones that I know that Srinivas has coming out. So I've seen a few of their other games, and I'm super, super excited. Also David, another great pair. Like, I know we talked about Hannibal and Sean at the top. And again, these people are friends, but I think like it's a really exciting designer circle to follow. So this is all just so exciting. Okay, huge grains of salt out of the way. That was Greasy Spoon and Dickory in Lepidoptery. I think my main con is I cannot say this game, but it does make it super easy to search on BGG. I just type in Lepid and I find it. But yeah, those are the games. Yeah, I'll have links in the description. And thank you so much for watching. I know this was a wacky one, but happy soon to be February, the second month, month number 2, about 2-player games. And again, we will be covering Dino Tricks soon. So this is incoming. Thank you so much for watching. All the cats have left because I've been rambling on too long. You're the best. Happy, it's a holiday coming up. Happy Groundhog Day. Okay, bye.